What is possible when traveling for a little over 5 weeks as a foreigner in Japan? With a rail pass and a sense of adventure, the whole country is available to you. In 2019, we did just this and hit over 20 major cities and countless iconic landmarks along the way. This video is both a guide to traveling through the country and a reflection on our own experiences there. We hope it's both educational and motivational to you, and excites you to travel again as the effects of the pandemic subside. As an easy arrival airport, we decided to fly into Narita. It is the cheapest option from the US and has extensive options for making it into the city of Tokyo proper. In fact, we were able to initiate our first countrywide Japanese rail pass, or the JR Pass, which we had bought in the US. This is because the prices of rail passes are more expensive by about 5 to 10% margin when bought in Japan. Although, being able to buy another pass in Japan turned out to be a boon, as we needed additional 2 weeks of travel after the first 3-week pass had finished. After getting our rail pass at the airport JR station ticket office, a quick process that only took a few minutes, we were soon aboard a Narita Express train bound for Tokyo Station. One point of note, we had no hotel reservation for our first night in Tokyo, as we were expecting to be cheap and stay at an internet cafe. But this was a point of concern for border and custom agents, and would be a recommendation for future travelers to have prior to arrival. After a brisk, efficient, exciting, and awe-inspiring first train ride into Tokyo, we were hooked on Japan instantly. After years of suffering through American public transportation, Japan was literally and figuratively a sight for sore eyes. Once you are in the city, make good use of the Yamanote line that circles the center, and most highlights of the city are at your disposal within a few minutes walk. If you'd like to see or learn more about the highlights, history, and travel tips for Tokyo, I have a travel guide video I created, and it is listed in the description. If you set a fast pace, you can see most main sites in the city within 3 to 5 days. But as the largest city in the world, there's truly no end to the available activities. Most stations have English speakers working at ticket offices, announcements are made in English, and signage is easy to follow. While being in a foreign land seems daunting on paper, it is actually extremely easy to travel around it and experience Japan with zero language experience. This is the case throughout the country, and ticket office staff are very knowledgeable. In particular, I recommend using the Hyperdia app or website to plan your route the night or a few days before, and then head to the train station first thing in the morning to reserve your seats, especially on busy Shinkansen routes. With the density of activities and central location relative to other areas of Japan, I recommend using Tokyo as a central hub to return to after heading outside of the metropolis, utilizing the JR Rail Pass system. Tokyo is a familiar, more Western-oriented place after traveling through more rural areas of the country. After spending a few days in Tokyo, we decided to take the Shinkansen northwest towards the mountainous heartland and the city of Nagano. After a quick hour or so trip, we arrived. While the JR Pass covers most of the country, the first major exception occurred here in Nagano. If you are interested in viewing the famous snow monkeys who enjoy bathing in their natural hot springs in Jigokudani Monkey Park, then you will need a separate rail ticket for the line that heads to the valley. However, there is a 2-day combination ticket that is worth the money, as it includes admission to the park and is sold at Nagano Station. Don't forget to also visit Senkoji, one of the best Buddhist temples in the country. After enjoying the city, we quickly packed up and went south via limited express train for a quick stop at the castle town of Matsumoto. This famous castle, one of the premier original castles of the 16th century, developed between 1504 and 1520, is an icon of Japanese history and a national treasure. After a quick one-night stop to see the castle, we then travel south into the Kiso Valley to see another iconic visage of Edo-era Japan, Sumago Juku. Sumago-juku is a post town or rest stop along one of the two main roads that ran between Tokyo and Kyoto long ago. With the local population preventing modernization of the town, a walk down the central streets takes you back to historical times. There are also other post towns throughout the valley, especially if you want more time to explore this magical region. Although, while we had fun, we were ready to head on to the next city by the end of the day. Thankfully, we had reserved tickets from Kiso Valley back through Nagano to end the day over in Kanazawa. Similarly to Kyoto in the south, Kanazawa is renowned as a center for history and culture in Japan. With the top-ranked Kenrokuen Garden, numerous samurai and geisha districts, and a sprawling castle grounds, 2 full days in Kanazawa are filled with fascination. As Kanazawa is the end of the line for the Shinkansen that wraps through Nagano from Tokyo, it is also quite easy to reach. Also, if you like to leave towards the south, there is the fast, limited express train called the Thunderbird, which can rapidly deposit you in either Kyoto or Osaka within a few hours. This is what we did, and we soon ended up in Kyoto, but quickly transferred to another line at the central station to make our way to Nara, about 45 minutes south. This former capital of Japan, but far older than Kyoto or Tokyo, is one of the founding regions of modern Japan. The JR station in Nara is also at a great location and is an easy walk to most major sightseeing locations to the east up the hill. Also, you can hop on a local train to Horyuji Station in Ikaruga, about 10 minutes away, to see the world's oldest wooden buildings at Horyuji Temple. I go into detail on the sites and history of Nara in another YouTube video of mine, which I'll link in the description. After a quick overnight trip to Nara, we head back to the grand city of Kyoto. While JR trains are not the best to use to cover the city, I recommend getting a city day bus pass, as its extensive network is easy to use, efficient, and goes exactly where you need it. As with Tokyo and Nara, I have linked a travel guide video in the description. Otherwise, I could ramble for hours about the city. However, make sure to hit sites like Kinkakuji, Ryoanji, and Kiyomizudera at a minimum for your visit to Kyoto. Much like Tokyo, feel free to use Kyoto as a central hub for exploring central Japan. Major cities like Kanazawa, Osaka, Kobe, and Nara are all within an hour or so by JR Rail and covered by a rail pass. Although for us, we took a quick Shinkansen ride up to Tokyo again because we had 2 days before a night train we had scheduled about a week in advance was ready to take us to Matsue. Back in Tokyo on the day of our night train, we used our JR pass to go to Mito, about an hour north of Tokyo, and saw spectacular plum blossoms that were blooming in Kairakuen Garden. The sunset stroll back to the station along the lake next to the park was one of the highlights of the trip. Soon, we were back in Tokyo well into the night, but excitement kept us up as we awaited to board the Sunrise Izumo, one of the only night trains in service while we were in Japan. All through the night, this free with rail pass journey led across Japan and beyond traditional Western tourism regions of Osaka and Kyoto, and into the more rural and less populated Sanin region. In the morning, we arrived at Matsue Station, eager to explore this historically significant city. With an original castle like Matsumoto, historic samurai abodes, and a link to the Western writer Lafcadio Hearn, history lovers rejoice in Matsue. Then, a short distance east, lies the city of Tottori, which offers a fascinating look at 20th century Western-style residence, Jinpukaku, one of the first of its kind in Japan. I discussed the history of Tottori and Matsue in a prior video, which I linked in the description. However, the train did not stop moving there, and we soon departed to another historically significant city, Hiroshima. Stopping for a day to reflect on war, conflict, and destruction of lives during World War II at the Memorial Museum was a must for us. While the city is now a vibrant urban center, with great food I might add, the area around the notorious Genbaku Dome and Memorial Park has a somber weight to the air. I highly recommend visiting, as you will want to strive for peace no matter what after you experience it. To lighten the mood, the next day, we took a local JR train to a port near Hiroshima to take a ferry to the famous island of Miyajima. This beautiful island in the Seto Inland Sea is famous for the water-bound torii gates of the main shrine. This trip is perfect for those with a rail pass, as a ferry to the island is also covered by the JR Pass, the only ferry to be covered in Japan. If you make it down to the Hiroshima area, this is a must-do activity. And with that, we conclude the first half of our itinerary of 5 weeks in Japan. This portion took us from February 15th to March 2nd, and we covered many of the major highlights of Japan already. The JR Pass is truly a divine utensil for foreigners to utilize when traveling the country, especially considering the thousands of dollars saved on train tickets. Make sure to stay tuned for next week's episode, which will have highlights such as the islands of Shikoku, Kyushu, and Hokkaido, along with a breakdown of miles traveled and total places visited. Thanks for watching.